as always by one of the smartest men in the world of NBA DFS analysis, Mr. Fast Steady Fear. How are you doing, Eduardo?
I am excellent. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm ready. It's Wednesday. It's a hump day, but I feel like this slate, is going to be a little more hospitable than yesterday's, where there were landmines all over the place, some of which we warned you guys about yesterday, some of which perhaps we didn't see coming. But let's talk.
I didn't see any of the landmines coming. I liked all the landmines. I was sitting in my room like, oh, look at this cuddly landmine. He's gonna be so good. So nope, not me. None of those real. It's a Giannis. I like Luka. I like Lori. Liked all the landmines plenty.
I avoided many of those guys, including Lauri Markkanen, who in all the pieces of content, I said the same thing, said it on our show, worried about the rebounding, worried about his effort level, the positioning, all that. Avoided that. You know, I didn't avoid Mo Wagner, who looked good in the minutes he got, then got no more. Really did nothing else after that.
I don't know if I was suitably low enough on him. Like I said, I liked him in DK GPPs. And I did. But I also said, I think I specifically said, I don't know if he gets 16 or 28 minutes, and talked about when they were going to hand over the keys to the kids and whatever. He got 10 minutes. So I definitely underestimated the floor on Mo Wagner minutes. So
yeah, I mean, he was playing directly behind Kuzma, was not getting the center minutes. So something to keep in mind when Mo Wagner and his German siren song tries to trick us in the next few
30 minutes for JaVale there. Talk about it tomorrow, I guess.
I moved that whole game. Watching it made no sense. They phoned in the last two. Then all of a sudden, Rondo's playing full effort again. Everybody's busting their butt. It's all very strange.
Luke obviously, the spend up yesterday was LeBron. Like, it's amazing how off, I'll just speak for myself, maybe other people had a better read on it, how off I was on them. Like, first, all right, I'm FanDuel and Power Forward. I think we want to spend up for Tobias Harris and Lori. And then I think, at small forward, LeBron would be crazy. And I really think your guy's Giannis. And then, no, not so much, no. I liked the Bulls weren't as good as I collectively thought they would be. I had a couple good takes. You know who I liked and was really good, who maybe some other people didn't like? Derek White.
Oh, yeah, you did. I saw that one tweet. Look, I was wrong, but the price, I stand by it. Price is too high, but, if he keeps
it's really not in a decent matchup. He is at 6'3" on FanDuel specifically, where I loved him, but even 65. He is a guy who, in a good matchup, I think gets you 40. Got a little bit more than that there, but he's legitimately very, very good, and you take Rudy Gay out of there in his usage.
Sure. The Rudy Gay thing I didn't account enough for. You're right about that.
He's an under-the-radar dude. I'm not expecting everyone to have the most nuanced and refined takes on Derek White, but that's another reason I like him, is he's just not as known as he should be, even after pulverizing the Hawks as chalk that one day.
Yeah. I was all over him that day, but yeah, I guess I got to be a converted devotee.
Speaking of pulverizing the Hawks.
Yeah, the Hawks. It's a tough team to pulverize. We'll talk about that.
No, I'm setting.
Yes, I know. But before we do that, let's promote Thrive Fantasy, because they are our top partner. They're also a brand new DFS app. I guess less brand new because we've been promoting them for months, but still new relative to all the other ones out there. All you have to do for Thrive Fantasy is draft a lineup built to prop bets of only top tier athletes. You pick 10 props out of 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth, and that's where the game theory lies. So go click this link. I'm going to drop into the chat right now. Use the promo code AWESEMOLBL on this link that's in the YouTube chat right now. You get $5 free. Doesn't matter. Don't have to deposit. You're just getting $5 for showing up. So that's better than most jobs out there. You got to actually do work. This one is download it, get in there, click it. We'll give you a free prop right now from a guy who's going to be popular today. Nikola Vucevic. Eddie, he's got an over-under of 20.5 points. The over will get you 95. The under will get you 105. I'm going over here, even though the under is a little appetizing. I got him at 25.4 points today. But what would you do, Eddie, with an over-under of 20.5 points for Big Nick?
Yeah, I would go over there as well. I have him a few over that as well. I think I have him at 23.8. But, yep, that feels like a pretty easy over. The matchup is very solid, and if you want to talk about the Magic for a minute, I think all 6 of the Magic guys we can expect to see significant time and usage are strongly in play here. So all the starters plus Terrence Ross, and so a couple things are site dependent. Terrence Ross, obviously, super duper value on DK. I do think the ceiling is obviously there. A lot of these things will have to react to ownership when we get into that. Augustine, I like a lot at FanDuel, where he's droppable on 4,300. Like, he does not frequently hit the 30, 35, 40 upside, but it does happen, and this is certainly one of the spots it can happen. Looking at the lineups I've been tinkering with today, most GPP lineups tending to have 2 or 3 members of the Magic. I probably slightly prefer in tournaments. I probably slightly prefer Aaron Gordon to Vooch as my number one. It's very close. There is some necessary uncertainty due to him returning from an injury, but it is a rib, which makes you think it will likely not be limiting. But the upside is really super, and just the price there. Not that Vooch on DK even for 2,500 more, or FanDuel for $3,000 more. I don't still project extremely well. But I don't think those are two of the guys I would try to avoid in the same lineup. Like, I like having 2 or 3 guys from this team in my lineups. I suspect the 2 pairings I would try to avoid the most would be Ross and Fournier, or Gordon and Vooch, simply because of shared resources and/or minutes and/or usage there. So I suspect I would actually have more Gordon than Vooch, but I suspect I'd be over the field on both of them. I'm guessing we have. I'll throw out a guess at Vooch at 25 and Gordon at 15. What do we got?
We got Vooch at 20 and Gordon at less than that.
I was sure less than that.
16% for Gordon.
Okay, so a little higher on Vooch. I suspect I would be over on both those numbers. Probably something like probably 25 to 30 each. They just project really nicely. Also, it's worth pointing out for these guys on Orlando, especially those members of the front court, the minutes have been starting to trickle up a little bit too for everybody as they're really coming down to the crunch time here. So they're to an extent shortening the rotation, but really just the minutes are more solid, even all the way down to say Augustine, and even have started to tick up a little bit. So that gives me a little more appeal, and then obviously the matchup is ideal. So. Like the Magic, yeah. Past that, obviously Isaac a little better on DK, though it's worth pointing out when he hits his ceiling, there tend to be a lot of steals and blocks involved. He's a guy who has defensive potential to pick up a number of those. So on FanDuel, where the position is already weak, if you are issuing a popular and potentially fractured Paul George, I can totally, see getting Isaac into some of those lineups. But I like having at least 2 members of the Magic here.
All right. Also, Eddie, if you want to try to move your mic, apparently it's the same issue as you had whenever Josh and you worked through it with a little bit of echo going. And the chat is being very unhelpful in YouTube, but that's why we're going to go to the premium Slack. Yeah, if you want to try that while we'll do that, do this stuff and make sure, hopefully, if you guys have any feedback, though, that is helpful instead of just spamming stuff, because spamming things over and over again don't accomplish anything.
It's
We're
funny
aware.
That you call it feedback, because it's probably also that was a double entendre there.
That was totally intended, but yeah, no, just don't like spamming the same word over and over again, guys. Doesn't help anything. Saying it, we're here, we'll try to fix it, but spam doesn't help anybody. Just keep that in mind, please. All right, Eddie. So you talked about, I'm with you all, by the way, on all the Orlando, Washington stuff. The Washington side, what are we doing with Bradley Beal today? Somebody mentioned it on my Four Corners video in the comments today, which I thought was a pretty good point. Bradley Beal, a nice little pivot to Steph Curry, who's going to probably pick up some ownership today. Bradley Beal going under-recognized, but as steady as can be, been over 50 fantasy points, about as far as you can go back. Had up to 60 fantasy point upside, which he's been hitting pretty regularly as well. How about Bradley Beal and the rest of the Washington side?
Yeah, 1 or 2 people, please briefly comment if my audio issue has been improved. Second, I think Beal is in play as a nice tournament pivot on DK, where I agree he will be eclipsed by more popular Curry and Vooch and probably Westbrook, close to Harden, George, all those other guys in and around that price range. There's a psychological effect to DFS where people just get used to paying X for a guy. So you frequently get players who break in and they're way too cheap and people love them, and then they come up $1,000, $1,500, and they're still too cheap and they end up being under rostered because people are just like, I don't get it. I had that guy at $1,500 less 3 days ago. So seeing Brad Beal at 9.8 on DK, feels like, how the hell am I going to get money off that? But as a pivot on a medium-sized slate, I'm fine with it there. FanDuel, it's really hard for me to get behind 11-2. I find that to be obviously much less. And again, it's worth pointing out this matchup is not ideal for him. This is an Orlando defense that has really played as an elite defense for a month, 6 weeks now. So FanDuel, I don't think I could do it under almost any circumstances. DK, yes, I agree with you that certainly the upside is there, and obviously also gives you some added correlation running it back with your numerous Washington fellows, or your numerous Orlando fellows, pardon me.
Also, apparently Echo slightly better, but still going. If you make any changes you can, that'd be great. But otherwise, it's going to be probably about as good as it's going to get. So sorry about that, guys. A question in the premium Slack, though, which I think we should jump to next because it's a question I'm sure a lot of people will be asking today. From Go Ducks 1986, can we answer the elephant in the room? Westbrook versus Harden, considering price and ownership on FanDuel. What would you say with those two guys? We're going to be pretty highly priced, but both have some nice upside.
Yeah, I don't. I'll first speak to the overall question as far as the elephant in the room. I don't consider your lineup to need either of those players. So usually when you say something like that, it's on a shorter slate where I super need to pay up for one of these dudes. I'm perfectly happy paying up for either of those guys. My answer there is going to be Westbrook in a vacuum. This is going to change whether or not, if you are playing on DraftKings where the Harden price is a little more palatable, and if you don't have Chris Paul, who is super chalky, you're getting some added leverage to the field. So, that sort of changes things a bit. Same thing on FanDuel, a little extra cookie probably because you have super popular Curry already. People are unlikely to double super pay up at point guard. And George is very popular due to the paucity of decent plays at small forward. But setting aside site concerns, I would be a little more inclined towards Westbrook. I like his matchup a little bit more. This is a Brooklyn team that just hemorrhages points to any sort of driving guard with some sort of authority, and if Westbrook is anything, he is that. So I would be more inclined towards Westbrook in a general sense today than James Harden. For what it is worth, I have none of either. I lied. I have one Russell Westbrook, and I have a Yahoo, FanDuel, and DraftKings cash and cash and GPP lineup in front of me. I have one Westbrook and no Georges currently, though I suspect George may find his way into the FanDuel GPP one as I'm still tinkering with it.
Okay, that seems fair to me. What about the rest of the pieces in that Rockets game? We do have a Chris Paul who's going to be very popular today. Clint Capella less popular, but still in the mix, I think, for a lot of people. What about that Rockets side? And just hit the Rockets side first because I think we're going to probably want some more depth on the Warriors side.
Right, so again, obvious site dependency. FanDuel, 8,500 a bit much for Chris Paul, or 84, I can't recall which is it offhand. 69 on DK is a superlative price. I would not try to avoid that chalk. If we have his own... The point at which I would start trying to avoid 6,900 Chris Paul is probably like 45%. I suspect we have him well under that, so I would be on that very heavily. Harden, I mentioned, gets a little extra value as a play because whatever 25-30% we do have Chris Paul at, there's a little extra cookie for him there. Capella, it is not generally a good spot for him. Cousins, generally not good for him. Warriors, generally not good for him. Now, earlier this year in the game... So these two teams have played 3 times this year. One time, there's not a lot to take away. The game 3 weeks ago, there was at least a little bit we could look at and take away. But there was a game Harden missed and a game Paul missed, and the first game of the year where the Rockets, who haven't lost to them this year, blew out the Warriors in Houston, beat them by 20-something. Notable, I think, for the fact that it was the worst fantasy game out of the Warriors in 4 years. I believe, without looking, Kevin Durant had 30 fantasy points. Next was Kevon Looney with 20, I think. Like, it was literally the worst fantasy game. All the guys you would expect outside of Kevin Durant for the Warriors to do things had like 15 fantasy points. It was that goddamn bad. I remember that day well. They did not show up. All this being long way of saying I was frustrated by the lack of applicable tape recently. Looking at the postseason last year, costing myself 6 digits of money, making me say it all over again, is still a little bit more instructive there. But Capella is in a tough spot here. The ceiling is there. In one of the games this year, he had 60 to whatever the goddamn hell ridiculousness. I believe it was the one Paul was out. But the matchup isn't good. I would have some if I was playing a butt ton of lineups. Generally, I prefer Valanciunas for a few $100s less. I prefer Cousins for a few $100s more. I just prefer other centers to him. So the ceiling is there. He did have, I want to say, 60-something at some point this year. It's not a particularly good spot for him, and with all hands on deck for this team, generally trying to look elsewhere.
How about PJ Tucker? He's a guy who's also going to be pretty popular today. A nice price on DraftKings, but the upside questionable. He showed 46, I think, fantasy point upside last time in a game that Harden was out. The same one I think you're talking about where Capella had the big day. PJ Tucker, popular. Would you want to go with him if he's going to be borderline chalky?
If PJ Tucker, I know. I regardless of other circumstances, I don't want any. PJ Tucker is going to be chalky. That's what do we have
top
projected
10?
at? I mean, he's 3,800. I get it. The game has some pace. I guess it's tied basically with the 2 early games around 230 for the 3 games that have some rapidity. But really, what's our projected ownership for $3,800 PJ Tucker?
Got him at 19% right now.
Okay. Yeah, I would have less than that. Like, I like PJ Tucker. We've had a couple good PJ Tucker games this year, but he, not unlike Draymond, is nearly unpredictable due to the fact that his points just come in random occurrences and is a defensive guy who gets stats other times by being on the court. Draymond even more so. So, like, people were talking to me earlier today whether or not Draymond's usage rate today with Durant out should be 12% or 15% or 17%, and usage rate doesn't even count assists, and it also doesn't count rebounds and steals and blocks. So what the hell is that doing for Draymond Green? Not to say that it's not relevant. Of course, it's a factor in determining what you project him to do tonight, but not as relevant for him or PJ Tucker as almost any other player in the NBA. So because of the fact, I guess, that would mean that they're largely unpredictable or more unpredictable outside of, obviously, they're both going to do better in pace-up spots. But PJ Tucker does better when teams allow more corner threes, which is where, when he has a big offensive game, that's where it tends to come from. Things like that. But, if PJ Tucker is going to be chalky tonight, I would want to be under the chalk.
All right. I think that seems fair to me. I like PJ Tucker a little bit as a value just because he opens up some stuff. I assume that's why a lot of people are getting there. Sure. Also, Josh Jackson projected for a good amount of ownership for the same reasons.
Josh Jackson, a little more likely to spike in upside, has randomly been very successful against the Jazz. If that in some reason matters to you, doesn't matter to me at all. I think that's apropos of other guys being out much more so than anything else. And we still have TJ Warren out, of course, but yeah, I have not found any value under 4K on DraftKings that I like, and just don't currently have any. I'm much more balanced than that. There's a lot of guys I think have a very large upside in that 6-7K range. We've already talked about Aaron Gordon at 67, Chris Paul is 69. I mentioned I like Valanciunas, he's 68. You have Klay Thompson without Durant at 72. You have Trey, you have Mike Conley, you have Steph Curry. I'm a little more inclined to play balance than wedge in, again, PJ Tucker or Josh Jackson against the Jazz. Like, I think generally I would be more inclined to do that. Of course, those guys can get there and may work out brilliantly. I'd rather, I think there's plenty of mid-price guys who have all the upside you need.
Okay, seems fair. Let's go to the other side. We have Kevin Durant out for the game. On a season-long basis, the biggest spikes have been to Klay Thompson, who gets a pretty big per-minute boost. Steph Curry, a little bit of one. DeMarcus Cousins, mostly flat. But with DeMarcus Cousins in the lineup, there isn't as much of a sample size. So what are you trusting here on this Golden State side? Who gets the usage? Which guys are you the most comfortable with?
Yeah, I prefer Curry. This would be a 15-minute conversation, but if you dig into a little deeper, doing Klay without Durant and Curry without Durant folds in a lot of other shit that doesn't answer the question very well. Durant's missed exactly, I believe, a game this year against Orlando, and in that game you got 30. Top of my head in this, but I think 33 shots out of Curry, 23 shots out of Klay, 17 or 18 out of Boogie was about the number, and Draymond, I believe, did absolutely nothing if memory serves. I find that to be a reasonably likely distribution of shots here again today, and the pricing differential between Klay and Steph isn't close on FanDuel to me, and on DK I would still rather go with Steph. You are looking at Chris Paul, who is obviously very good defender, which is, some sort of limiting factor, but I'm more excited about the Steph Curry price than the Klay Thompson price. I'm a fan of having one of them, if at all possible, Even Cousins sort of covers that to a little bit, though he probably comes in third on that list for me. And it can be a little site dependent. FanDuel, it's I think right now in the GPP lineups I built, I have Steph on FanDuel and Clay on DK, which feels slightly better in both spots.
All right, that seems fair to me. Got another question, which will take us to a game that we should talk about. DeMarre Carroll out for Brooklyn. We talked a little bit about Russell Westbrook's prospects, but let's talk about the Brooklyn side of this equation for now. Who's going to benefit with Carroll out, and just give me your take on the rest of the Nets.
Yeah, it's, as always with the Nets, a bit of a mess there. So all these predictions and projections are a little up in the air. Last game we saw Crabbe pick up a ton of minutes, but that was heavily related to Harris being in a lot of foul trouble, and then, again, that game went sideways and ended with a blowout run. My favorite net, if we were looking DraftKings, would be Jared Allen. Look, I like Jared Allen a lot, and one of the occasional failures of projections is not everyone produces in the same way or needs the same things to be successful. So, for example, Senators versus Detroit isn't a great matchup, and Senators versus Oklahoma City isn't a great matchup, but they are pretty good matchups for Jared Allen, whose projection and production can most largely be tied by how much time he gets to hang out by the hoop. And that's the third time I've said that in 5 days, and the 31st time I've said it this year, but it really looks true. If you go look at all the games this year where he had to run around and chase somebody who was going to shoot some threes, he gets fewer minutes, which is very relevant when figuring out how many points he's going to score, because he's not that good at it. And generally scores fewer fantasy points because he gets a lot of his points from, rebounds, putbacks, and blocks, and those are harder to do when you're 23 feet away from the basket. Sort of an end story there for me. So I am going to like $4,700 Jared Allen on DK. He's probably out of play for me on FanDuel. There's obviously a pretty significant pricing difference there where you're taking him like directly over Steven Adams. I can't quite get behind making that decision. But Jared Allen, probably my favorite net today. Dinwiddie, I'm very meh on. Ed Davis is an excellent value play, either power forward on FanDuel at only 100 over the minimum or 3,200 on DK. That can obviously certainly work out in spades, so I'm a fan of his. As far as figuring out what to do with the wings, my favorite would probably be Kurucs at this point. Not a large differential for me, Kurucs versus Crabbe and Harris, and I probably rank them in preference, counting their prices basically in that order: Kurucs, Crabbe, Harris. But it's a bit of a mess. I don't have an issue with Karis LeVert again. This is a team that's really hard to pay because you don't know what's going to happen, and there's just so many ways between the coach who does hot-hand it more than I'd like. Fix the echo. Well, I can't fix the echo the way I did it last time without permanently muting Chris. So I could kick
the world would be
off the show. Let's bring the microphone way out here, Tony Bennett style. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, like you're working the room, like you're singing a song for the crowd.
I'll throw a jacket over my shoulder and loosen my bow tie.
So I like Joe Harris the most out of the wings, but I think your point about Kurucs is one actually that Adam raised on the deeper dive before us, that Kurucs is probably the guy most likely to benefit from a rotational standpoint, which I think is pretty sound. I just feel like Joe Harris is a good matchup for the Thunder in terms of spacing, and his shot is due for some positive regression after a couple down, it looks like a couple down weeks, really. I don't know. I like Harris a little more than I think you do, but
yeah, I'm 4,500 on FanDuel. I'm perfectly fine. DK, I probably strictly dislike. FanDuel, I think he's just fine.
Okay,
I'd slightly prefer Kurucs between the two of them.
Let's go to the Thunder side because we're going to question Andrew in the YouTube chat asking a question, which I'm sure a lot of people have right now. Paul George, what are we thinking here? He shot just 8 times versus Utah, though. The Utah had driven his usage rate down in previous matchups as well. I'm worried about him. We've talked about this on the show, and I've mentioned each time I feel like there's a legitimate concern, especially on a back-to-back for his shoulder. He says he's just rusty. The Nets also limit threes pretty well, but Paul George did destroy them earlier this year alongside Westbrook. They both had over 70 fantasy points. What are we doing with Paul George, and are you willing to trust him if he's going to be 20%-ish owned?
Trust is a big word. I like him on FanDuel. Again, the price is just better. 10,000 there is just better than 9,600 on DK. And the position is far worse. With all the flexibility on DK, I'm a little more inclined to go other places, but I have no insight anyone else does, and I've read every comment I could find about Paul George.
He says that there's nothing structurally wrong. He's just figuring some stuff out. They're obviously not on a back-to-back. Actually, nobody who played yesterday plays today. There are no teams on the back end of a back-to-back. The Thunder do play again tomorrow, though, if that factors into anyone's evaluations here. The Thunder, the Magic, and the Jazz play again tomorrow. So that's not incredibly relevant, as all three of those teams are playing for playoff seeding, and I don't think they're changing a whole hell of a lot based on the fact they play tomorrow, but worth considering there. But yeah, I do think Paul George is a much better play on FanDuel. I think the ceiling is massive. If he looks fine today and takes 20 shots, including 12 threes, and makes 7 of them and scores 73 fantasy points, I'd be like, okay, not surprising. Did it earlier this year. I guess he's healthy. I don't think he's permanently damaged. It's not terribly different from the Lauri Markkanen. Something in a funk there. I can't exactly put my hand on it. If you look at, Lauri Markkanen's production in February, it was brilliant. Like, it was just amazing. And then for the last couple of weeks, it's been just dreadful. So I don't think it's a permanent condition. I don't think he's got, lupus. I think he's going to come out of it. So you're sort of, guessing. And you're getting him at better prices as it starts to reduce and lower ownership because he's been trash for a while. But I wish I had some insight I could add for anyone there, but I just don't. I think everyone has a pretty good grasp on it as an extra gamble due to his current condition.
Apparently the mic is perfect now.
I see that. It is literally 4 inches under my... I'm Tony Bennetting the damn thing. Look, I want the audio to be... I have no reason why... The issue has been feedback. And the couple times it's been shitty in the past are when I forgot to move the microphone out from my speakers. And then started the show, and then even after I moved it, it didn't matter, and it just went to crap in a hurry. But apparently today, moving it from 4 feet to 4 feet 9 inches from the speakers was the magic touch. So I don't know. I will buy myself a second on both of my gaming systems. I have headphonies and stuff. I will get some sort of different audio setup because this shit has to stop happening. This is annoying, a waste of time.
Well, the important thing is it was never my fault.
I don't know. I think we can argue it's your fault.
By like proxy, like the butterfly effect of my general feng shui passing on to you. But no, this is not one.
I'm gonna do a duet with Lady Gaga next. Yes.
We're at the halfway point, so good timing. We got perfect mic for a little game of America's favorite game. A little bit of America's favorite game Daddy likes for the halftime moment. Let me just refresh, make sure I have the latest ownership projections on Osmo.com, which you can get promo code live before lock. You can also get it via the pinned tweet at Osmo_com on Twitter. We're doing a giveaway right now where you and 2 friends can win. A very easy way to win. Just got to reply and retweet. So check that out on Osmo_com. But yeah, some various ways to get our ownership projections in your life. Eddie, number 1 on the list today on DraftKings, we have Chris Paul. Expected to have 32% ownership. How does Daddy feel about that?
I like it. I'd have more than that. He just profiles points per dollar to be to the hell good. There is a giant ceiling there. 2 were without Harden, but he has, greater than 53 of his last 4 regular season games against the Warriors until he hurt his leg and cost me more than a year's salary in the Western Conference Finals last year. He was pretty consistently giving you 40, 45 every game. So just 6,900 is too cheap. I don't think there's anything systemically wrong with him. This is a statement game for everyone. They want their sweep. So, I think that is actually too low by a significant amount. I'd have at least half.
Okay, yeah, I think that seems fair to me. I'm over that for Chris Paul as well. It's a nice spot. I also think he's pretty motivated. I think he didn't like getting kicked out of that Western Conference series because of his bum hamstring, and I think he proved that the last game without Harden. And I worry a little bit about both those guys being in the lineup tonight, but I think they're going to come out motivated if nothing else. Avery Bradley, number 2 on the list at 31% expected ownership on DraftKings. How does Daddy feel about that?
That's right about the amount I would want to have. It'll be interesting to see where Terrence Ross comes in because those 2 guys end up fitting in a pretty significant spot. I like Terrence Ross a lot, but I like Avery Bradley more. He's simply has the usage and the production and the minutes, and the matchup is there for him. So for some reason, DK being incredibly stubborn with his price, He's just still points per dollar. I mean, there's just a number of players on today's slate on DK who are just too cheap, and you probably highlight that list with Chris Paul, Jared Allen, and Avery Bradley, who we've hit enough of a sample now. I don't think, it's not based on ridiculous, shooting rates that'll be difficult to conclude. He's, a better defender than most guys on the team, so they want him out there for that. So, I think he's, get away from a bowl, especially if you're playing Mike Conley, though the two of them can hit a ceiling together. They've done it 2 of the last 4 games off the top of my head, and that price is just so cheap. So I would have more than that too.
I think Conley should be as highly owned as Bradley today. I think they both look good, but Conley has been over 47 in his last 3, and he's looking good, and it's a perfect spot for him. I think both these guys together would be the way I would go contrarian, personally.
Yeah, I have absolutely no issue with that. I have Conley in the DK, GPP, and cash lineups in front of me. So there you go.
There we go. Mike Conley not in the top 5. Actually, very, very far down, surprisingly, from the top 5. Never mind. He's in the top 10. Number 3 on the list, Jarrett Allen, 31% expected ownership on DraftKings. You've talked about him already being cheap. How does Daddy feel about that?
Yeah, I like him. You said what percent?
31%.
31.
Same as Avery Bradley.
That's a number at that point, because the ceiling is only so vast for him, especially with DraftKings scoring. So I would probably, even though I like him a lot, have a little bit less than that. I approximate I'd be around 25%. 31 is a big number when there's just so many centers on DraftKings that are underpriced. Devoting that many resources to one guy seems kind of wrong. Although I will say, the more I think about it, I might be wrong, just because, as we've previously alluded to, there's no really good cheap value that we're feeling great about. Like him at 4,700, Avery Bradley, Terrence Ross, those are the value guys here. So, I'm coming around on that. I'm going to actually go with I like that. I would probably have a hair more, just based on what we have right now in current lineup construction.
So number 4 is interesting, and I think fits the same narrative that you just mentioned about value. Jeremy Grant, number 4 at 26% ownership.
Yeah, he's 4,800 or what have you. He's not brilliant. You don't love him, but I project him for the high 20s. He's going to play 35, 36 minutes. The matchup is very good, so yeah, he's perfectly fine. I'm not doing flips to have him, but same sort of idea. So I will hesitantly like it, as in I at least understand it. Yeah.
And we got a tie for number 5 on the list. Russell Westbrook and DeAndre Ayton, both at 25% expected ownership. How does Daddy feel about both those gentlemen?
Yeah, I'd be way under on Ayton. Westbrook, at or over, that's about right. But I'd be way under on Ayton. Same theory with the centers. Look, I like Ayton. Sure, he could bang out 40 here for you. 6,300 is pretty cheap, but I should just look at the ownership to hold on. I have our website pulled up here. I'm just going to peek at the ownership for a second myself and look at other centers rather than ask you about 10 of them. So, even in his proximate price range, we have Steven Adams against Brooklyn at, half that. I would rather have Steven Adams at half that. I have him projected almost identically in a related story. I have Ayton for 1 more fantasy point, so I would probably rather play Steven Adams. I like Valanciunas more than most people seem to. Valanciunas checks every box for me here, and I'm not sure why he's not more popular, but he gets Atlanta, which, surprisingly is good. I rewatched some of the tape from earlier this year with him on the Raptors against the Hawks. They've played each other a few times. He's spanked Dedmon around every time they've been on the court together. I have him projected for 40.7 fantasy points, and that's, without him potentially banging out a few extra minutes. That's with me putting him at 27 minutes, which there's a chance he gets on top of. So at 6,800, I'm a bigger fan of playing Valanciunas than Ayton. Again, Valanciunas, kind of best possible matchup. Ayton, maybe not worst possible matchup against a Jazz team and Gobert, who have been worse against centers this year relatively, but there's just a lot of centers who can get work done for you, whether you're talking about Cousins, who isn't that much more, 1,100 value on both the Brooklyn centers. So I'd be well under on Ayton. That's a place I'd take a stand, just because he needs to kill me for it to hurt me, right? Like, I'm looking at all these other guys I like for value. Like, I guess you could get, 47 out of Ayton here and have him make me look really stupid, but I don't know. I'd be a little surprised. Like, normally, chalky guys, who I worry about fading are guys I'm like, God, I'm really worried he's going to get 55, and that's just going to be it. There's this guy who is 30-40% owned. I'm recommending having none. That guy goes off for 60. We're going to look terrible. Ayton's not going off for 60. Valanciunas could. Ayton's not. That's just not going to happen. I don't know how long I think he's had, I'll take a look, but I think he's had more than 40 like once in his last dozen games. Like, he's very solid, 6,300, but just game logging his last X games, 33, 30, 34, 32, 33, 50. There is a 50 in there against the Lakers. Okay. Forgot about that one, but spoiler, Jazz, not Lakers on defense. 44 against Milwaukee, again, infinitely better matchup. 17 against the Knicks, don't want to know quite how that happened. 33 against Portland, 39 against Golden State. So, look, I like Ayton fine, but I would be under 25%. I think I'd settle in somewhere around 10 and mix him in with a lot of other guys. I'd think long and hard about Ayton or Portis. I'm going to go look and see what we have Portis at for $100 less.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Ayton was coming up a fair amount for me, but I think that game in particular, I really only like as a stack. I thought I was going to be there more, and they were in my Four Corners video because I think the Suns been playing competitive. They've won 4 out of their last 5, beaten Golden State, beaten Milwaukee, which we've talked about in the show. I think they can stay competitive here, but I agree that Ayton on his own, I think being that highly owned is not the most appealing.
Right, but there's I think above average risk of it not staying competitive without getting into the business of projecting blowouts. Whatever we think the odds are that a game chosen at random in the NBA gets shit out of hand and doesn't have a fourth quarter, let's say it's, 12%. I have a feeling this one would be above that number. And it's a reasonable spot where he could end up in some foul trouble, I think. So there's enough reasons for me to want to get away there. If he spikes the 50 here against the Jazz, more credit to him.
All right, that seems fair to me. Question about a guy who actually on the deeper dive as well, they mentioned him as a potential pivot to Jonas Valanciunas, Joakim Noah. And I think this is sort of where my concern is as well, is that the minutes have been coming down a little bit for Jonas, which, he still can have those crazy high days. But I think, what are your thoughts on Noah? And I guess, what are your thoughts on Noah relative to Jonas?
Yeah, I'm more inclined towards Jared Allen, who ends up in a similar price. FanDuel, where you're getting a better relative price on Noah, I think he's fine as sort of a tournament move there. I don't know how much ceiling is there, but I'm fine if you end up with Noah in tournament lineups. I think the minutes are pretty hard to predict exactly where he's going to end up, but I'm okay with having Noah. Also, while talking about backup centers whose names sound like Noah, Nerlens Noel not out of play for me in this spot. He's just a guy their circumstances can work out. I would want Markieff to be out, which adds a couple extra minutes to my projection for him, for what it's worth. So I don't know if we got Markieff news, but if Markieff Morris doesn't play, especially, I'd have a little bit of interest in Nerlens Noel.
All right. People asking for some more talk about D'Angelo Russell.
Sure.
I guess maybe we kind of went by him a little fast in that game, but give me some more thoughts. You've talked about Dinwiddie a little bit more, but one more go around on Russell.
Yeah, I like him as the obvious super ceiling target on this Nets team going back. There's always the risk of minutes. Having Dinwiddie back, there is an implicit threat to him. It was not surprising that when Dinwiddie was out, he had so many more ceiling games because, again, Kenny Atkinson runs the hot hand more than almost any other coach in the NBA. So, if Dinwiddie got it going, he would, or does get it going, he puts Russell on the bench. So there is a, sort of shaky floor there, but the ceiling is very, very big. Again, on FanDuel, I've talked about it with at least 3 people now. I slightly prefer Klay Thompson as far as a raw points and safety sort of thing. Slightly would prefer Klay Thompson in cash at the exact same price. But if you have Steph, then I probably go to D'Angelo Russell. So, I mean, there is a very big ceiling here that's all the pace up in the world. I like it quite a bit, but there is obviously quite a bit of risk as well.
Okay. And I guess while we're talking Noah and Noel and various no-based bigs, would you be willing to roll with Noah over Vucevic on FanDuel?
I'm sorry, would I be willing to roll with Noah over Vucevic?
Over Vucevic, yeah. I mean, I guess, saving a lot of money.
Well, sure. I mean, I don't know how Vucevic factors into that question, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think this person is saying that Vucevic is like the lock center of the day. So would you be willing to take a shot at a cheap guy who maybe has some upside?
Yes. I like him slightly more on FanDuel for what it's worth, the way it's priced and the way it's scored. So, yeah, I think he's fine to run out there as a tournament guy there. Dedmon is going to start and doesn't have a minutes limit. He's not completely out of play on DraftKings, where you can play him at forward for 5,500, by the way.
Is there a logical reason for you that he would hurt John Collins? Because I think the big games coming when Dedmon was sidelined and then on a minutes restriction doesn't surprise me with how they play together, but I'm curious what your thoughts are and if that makes Collins a little bit less playable.
It makes Collins slightly less playable because his minutes projection should be cut by about 2, because he occasionally plays backup center. Like when you had Dedmon out recently in the games for Len, what you had happen was Len and Collins started the game, Collins came out, then Collins came in for Len, then Len came back, and then Collins sat for a while. So it knocks down his minutes projection for me by I think 2 would be about the appropriate number. I'd still like John Collins as a guy who has a big ceiling. Again, Memphis still does play at a pretty wretched pace, but their ability to rebound, sans Marc Gasol post-trade deadline, has come way, way down. So, I mean, there is still big ceiling there. But someone tweeted me earlier today asking, who had a higher ceiling, Chris Paul or John Collins. But having Dedmon back in there and unfettered means that, he and Len probably play all the 5 minutes. Not necessarily, by the way. There's a chance that they pull Len back to, 15 minutes here, and Collins still gets, 6 minutes at center. Could happen.
Okay. Jay Kelly 13 is one of the good ones, so I'll allow this question. Could you guys run through a few FanDuel GPP plays? Sorry if that's too broad, but I hear a lot of DK talk. I feel like we've underserved FanDuel. So who would be your core guys if you were building a FanDuel GPP lineup today?
Well, we've mentioned D'Angelo Russell, who is priced a little more advantageously there. We've mentioned Paul George, who is priced a little more advantageously there. Both those are guys who have a massive ceiling with some uncertainty, so would certainly profile more as GPP plays for me. Aaron Gordon, who we already talked about, is a slightly better FanDuel play, where at $400 more than DK is proportionally less. So I'm a big fan of his at power forward there. Vooch is about equivalently priced. Again, I like playing Gordon or Vooch, probably not both. Steph Curry is much better priced on FanDuel, so I think he's a guy I'd want to have in a lot of lineups. Jeff Green is a good small forward sink at $4,500, plus your running back. You have some additional correlation with the fact that you're probably playing at least 2 members of the Magic. So top of my head, those are the guys who would be some of the guys I'd be most interested in GPPs on FanDuel.
All right. Any other notes you want to hit on before we go take some questions?
Someone asked a Yahoo question recently about Conley or Chris Paul. Raw points, I have Mike Conley for about 1.5 more. I really like Mike Conley, and he's also pretty well underpriced on Yahoo. He's the exact same amount as Chris Paul. Apparently, I would prefer Mike Conley in that context. Don't sleep on Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, I have projected for just shy of 50 again. He's too cheap. So if you're spending up and you're not vooching, some of my favorite centers on DraftKings just to handle this would be Vooch, Gobert, Valanciunas, Jared Allen, Cousins. I guess we'll stop there. But, those are some of the guys who would be cycled into basically my 2 center spots on DK, which again, I do think it is largely a 2 center spot position. Talked about that. More of a Jay Crowder than a Derek Favors spot. Again, price always factors into that. But worth mentioning while we're talking about the Jazz there. I'm guessing you still only have mid-20s minutes for Rubio, so I don't really want to do that. I think Donovan Mitchell's just fine against the Suns. They're a great matchup when they keep games close. I mean, good golly. That's exciting stuff when they do not get their ass kicked. You get some very nice fantasy games out of that. Talked about
anything else?
Talked about that. I don't know. Give me some questions. I'll keep looking through my notes. I had 4 pages today.
All right. Let's see. Would you spend up on DK? Would you go with Curry or Paul George?
On DK, I would probably rather play Steph Curry. The scoring's even more advantageous. Again, I would put his over-under for shots today somewhere around 28 or 29. There is just all this stupid ceiling in the world for him. There's obviously, and as you alluded to previously, both he and Russ had like 75 when they played Brooklyn earlier this year in regulation. So there's all the ceiling in the world for George too. But and I do think, if you have Westbrook, the answer is obviously Curry. If you have Clay, the answer then is probably Paul George. Like I do think I'm trying to avoid super spending up on either of those games if I can get a piece of either of them in one lineup. If you do end up double stacking it, try to take someone obviously running it back the other way. So if you are going to have Steph and Clay, make sure you have Chris Paul, for example. But I would be more inclined in a vacuum towards Steph Curry.
All right. Let's see. You've got questions. Where'd you go? For a $9,600 DK utility, where would you go?
I'm feeling that's George's price.
Well, yeah, that actually doesn't include Beal. I thought it did include Beal.
That's
too,
the same. No, it's basically the same question, and then you get the same answer.
Oh, you got Drummond too and Vooch.
I mean, it's Curry and Vooch. I have no issue with you playing Paul George. Clearly, all the ceiling in the world is there, but no one else quite makes that much sense. Drummond, look, I love Andre Drummond as a player. There is very little reason in one lineup to take someone from that game. Like, all the other games have some feel. Orlando and Washington, big pace. Brooklyn, Oklahoma City, big pace. All kinds of guys are priced very well. Memphis and Atlanta, lots of guys are too cheap on both sides. Atlanta is a sieve. They get their ass kicked. Phoenix is a sieve. They get their ass kicked and have some, guys who can spout off big fantasy games. Utah gets that brilliant matchup. Golden State and Houston obviously have a lot to play for. Some of the best players in the game. And then you have Detroit and Miami, which is a lot of, sure, maybe this is where it probably will be, just to be a dick, where Blake Griffin decides to play basketball again. Like, oh, look, he knows how to play basketball. But, that number is down to $8,100. I'm not going to criticize anyone for having $8,100 Blake Griffin in their GPP lineup. But, that game really unappealing for me in the context of this slate. I mean, those two teams are the two teams I'm the very least interested in taking guys from on this slate.
Blake has had 2 big games versus Miami this year. I did throw a couple in there knowing that and his price being down. He's had 55.75, 61.75 in the first 2 meetings this year. The third game wasn't that great.
In the 61, Andre Drummond played 7 minutes.
Yeah, and I think also Blake just looks terrible recently. I prefer Andre. I think I have a little more Andre than Blake today. I think Andre's still playable, and he's going completely under the radar.
I agree. 9,400 on DK, even 10-2 on FanDuel. Like, if we're going to have, I have no idea, 25% Vooch on FanDuel and 7% Andre, I'd like some Andre.
Yeah, I think as a low-owned guy, I think he's interesting. But Blake, look, those 2 big games I think did jump out, but something's wrong with him. He's not been playing up to himself. That 1 for 10 day, if that didn't clue you in, certainly seemed like it was telling a lot.
In a good matchup, too. So, yeah, that was... Again, I look at him largely like Laurie. Just the matchup is much worse. Like Laurie yesterday was like, you've been playing like shit, but the price is down a little bit, and the matchup is as good as it can get, and Zach LaVine is out. Okay, so looking at Blake today, it's sort of the same situation, except the matchup is far, far worse, and nobody's out. So I'm understandably, I think, much less excited.
Yeah, Blake also a guy rebounding down quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and again, this is not a spot where you're going to have Drummond and Whiteside and even Adebayo and Olynyk as a big 4, and this isn't a spot where I'd expect him to get infinite rebounds with the pace down too. So this wouldn't project for that to kick up that much for me in this spot.
Here's a question about some cheap guys, and this is just 2 separate questions, but I feel like it covers 4 cheap guys, so why not? Would you go Ed Davis or CJ Miles, and would you go Iguodala or Allen Crabbe? Yeah,
people mentioned in the chat, I saw when the very annoying for everyone else alerts came up that there were questions about both Justin Holiday and CJ Miles respectively. I would rather play CJ Miles of those 2 guys. Holiday's been bad. And the minutes aren't even like you thought with all these guys out he'd be soaking up, 32, 33 with Parsons back in there getting a little bit of time and all that going on. Holiday's losing touch, just isn't shooting the ball. And all he does is shoot the ball. It's hilarious I feel for him because literally he goes from, over the last couple of years being in Chicago where they were like, go ahead, take 30 shots a game, even though you're the least efficient shooter in the NBA, to Memphis where it's like, go as slow as possible. We'll give you 4 shots a game. Make them count. So I would go with CJ Miles over him. Plays down more, better rebounding side. Like, I would play CJ Miles over Justin Holiday between those two guys. Thoughts on running Whiteside in a DK GPP? It's fine for me. 58, I think, is the number now. That's obviously, like, you need something weird to happen, okay? I don't think it's out of possibility. I was going to say it's not out of possibility they're going to start him, but I think they announced, they are going to start Adebayo again. Which should be a bit of a warning. If he doesn't catch the start against Drummond, he's probably not catching starts. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they were doing, we're sort of easing him back from his injury, and maybe it'll be matchup based and whatever, this is the spot in which he gets the start. And if he didn't get it here, he's probably never getting it. That being said, 5,800, you get 2 fouls against Adebayo in the first 4 minutes, and you get 28 minutes out of Whiteside. He can get 50, so I'm not against it, but understand that it's one of those plays that will pay off brilliantly 5% of the time, not hurt you 10% of the time, and screw up your night 85% of the time.
Yeah, I think that checks out. Did you answer the Iguodala or Crab half of that? Because we're getting a bunch of Crab questions now.
No, I didn't catch that. I would slightly prefer Crab. You're going to see minutes here for McKinney. You're going to see minutes here for Damian Lee. I do project Iguodala. I did goose him by 2 minutes when Durant went out. But I would still slightly prefer Allen Crabbe for the matchup. So I would slightly prefer Crabbe either.
While we're in Crab Corner, how about Kevin Huerter or Allen Crabbe?
That's close for me. I will still go with Crabbe. Feel better about the minutes by a little bit, which feels weird to say about the Nets. Slightly prefer the matchup there. So, yeah, I will still stick with Crabbe there.
Dennis Schroeder or Evan Fournier for a FanDuel GPP if you have George and Aaron Gordon?
If you have no other magic than Aaron Gordon, I will still stick with Fournier. But that's very, very close for me.
Harden, we talked about it again, but thoughts on Harden at 12.2K on FanDuel?
It's not out of play, obviously. It is James Harden in a matchup that he has all the reason to gussy up and put his thing down for. I do not think he is. I wouldn't have him in one lineup. I don't think he's, points per dollar the best guy, but he's always going to be in play because he can score 95, and if he does that and you get him at 12% owned, you're dancing on a pile of money. So I don't know how to answer that any better than that. Yeah.
Any thoughts on Kenneth Faried for a FanDuel GPP? Now he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, a bit more expensive than I would like, and I'm obviously concerned about the minutes there. But in play for me, simply because you just need Capella to get stacked a couple fouls by Boogie, which is far from an impossibility. So I'm fine with it. Similar situation to the Whiteside question in that you need things to go a little squirrely. On its face, if there isn't injury, foul trouble, him just in the minutes I project him for having enough production to be worth it is pretty unlikely, but possible. Same thing as Whiteside. Whiteside could play his 21 minutes and score 45 fantasy points. That can happen, but you're hoping for something squirrely to happen. But in the same vein, I'm just fine with doing Faried at this point.
For DK Cash, would you go Steph and DJ Augustine or Paul George and the Crab Band?
Cash, Steph and Augustine, not close. Like, Steph and Augustine are both very cashy plays in this situation, and both Crab and Paul George are not. So pretty easily the former of those two, if I heard correctly.
Yeah, you did. FanDuel GPP, Blake and Adams or Gordon and J-Val?
Gordon and J-Val, who are in my FanDuel GPP lineup, spoiler, I think. Yes. So there you go. Yeah, I like J-Val. Obviously, that is a price for him. But I was looking at it, so like games he spent primarily against, and all of these with Toronto, where I would argue he was even a little less likely to hit ceilings. Now that he's on Memphis, there's just less guys screwing with him. The minutes are more secure, certainly, than they were in Toronto. You're not dealing with, Kawhi, Pascal, Lowry. The offensive talent around him is far more minimal. The last three games he played substantially, where he played the vast majority of his minutes against Dedmon, and one of these he played every minute against him. 27 minutes, 46 fantasy points, 26 minutes, 30 fantasy points, 24 minutes, 46 fantasy points. Like, it is a very, very good micro matchup for him. He has handled it very well. So I'm a fan of Valanciunas.
Delon Wright or Dennis Schroeder? I would go Delon Wright there. He actually projects pretty well for me.
If they were the exact same price, I would slightly prefer Delon Wright, yeah. I didn't think they were anywhere. I thought you had to pay up everywhere, but...
Yeah, I think they're... Yeah, Schroeder's more expensive on DraftKings. I'm not sure about FanDuel, but I think there was a pretty decent difference there too, but
yeah,
whatever. Still Delon Wright. Ross, Fournier, or LeVert in a FanDuel GPP?
If you have less than two other members of the Orlando Magic, I'm going to set out LeVert. If you have at least two members of the Magic, it's basically going to be a toss-up for me, because you're stacking your third guy on the Magic, or you're going with LeVert, who outright projects as the weakest for me, but, also is going to be by far the lowest owned of those three. So I will slightly hedge towards Fournier of those two, if exactly the same price of the two members of the Magic, but that is very situational.
What about the same question, but for cash on FanDuel?
Then I'm just going to play Fournier.
All right. I guess there's a lot of either-ors, but this question is a little more relevant for everybody. Thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins? He had a big day versus Houston a couple weeks ago. Looks good.
I like him a lot. It's a good matchup for him. There's a lot of centers I like a lot. Point per dollar, I have him a little lower than Valanciunas, a couple other guys, but I like DMC quite a bit. He's strong. I have no issue with any amount of exposure other than being your third really expensive Warrior guy in tournaments. I like him quite a bit.
Last minute thoughts on Bobby Portis?
Like him a lot in tournaments, either FanDuel or DraftKings. A little bit risky, but production speaks for itself. Matchup isn't ideal, but running it back as your members, against your Magic guys, I think that's just fine. So, yeah, I like Bobby quite a bit.
A lot of these questions you answered. Miles or Ed Davis on DK?
Ed Davis.
Let's see. Conley or Trae Young?
Conley. I have him for one more minute, 2.5 more fantasy points.
Yeah, I feel like that's Conley by a pretty wide margin for me.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I think
we are locked, I think.
Now. Yeah, we're locked
on my computer.
Think we got everybody. I tried to skip to the questions, which we're going to lock right now. So I think we got.
Give me some other ones. I'll load up some ownership on DK. See how we did.
For prosperity, Portis or Draymond Green for a FanDuel GPP?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, teams and stanking games really plays into that question for me because they are close. I like playing Draymond a lot on FanDuel and GPPs when his price gets down this low. He is sort of like a super PJ Tucker, where it is a little bit better with Durant out. The assist upside creeps up a little bit. The rebounds creep up a little bit. Durant's obviously a very good rebounder for a 3-guard. The dude's 7 feet tall. So when you replace him with Alfonso McKinney, that's good for an extra 0.6 rebounds on average for Draymond. So and then just on FanDuel, when the price gets down to like the mid-6s, I think he's 66 there is the number. Am I 64? Somewhere in the 6s. 3 for a steal and 3 for a block. He can always do, 3 of each of those, and you just get 50 out of nowhere. So, slightly inclined towards Draymond for me, but I like both those plays.
I would lean Portis, but I get where you're going with Draymond. I was surprised, and I think this might just be due for positive regression, but Draymond Green worse with Kevin Durant on the floor by 0.1 on a per minute basis, which surprised me.
Over really what sample size?
The entire year.
Well, okay, that's. There is the one game he was out and Boogie and Steph and Clay took 70 shots and he took 3 and didn't happen to get any steals and blocks, and so that giant, that game probably tilted it from slightly positive to slightly negative. But okay, I believe it.
Yeah, I was just surprised by it. I mean, to me, it seems like maybe rebounds need to even out for him or something. But
sure.
Yeah, just an observation. Let's do a little daddy likes. Close it out. I think we got. I guess this one's still applicable. What? This actually, I don't know what this question is, but here, I think it might be Augustine. But CJ Miles and Draymond Green, or Bruno and Agardon. in FanDuel GPP.
I'll take Agredon. He's my top play of the day. It was between him and Chris Paul. It's him and Agredon, which sounds like some sort of final form for one of those Transformers where you had to stick 5 Transformers together. Like you had Destructicon and Omega Supreme, and an Agredon was... Okay.
Or one of Daenerys' dragons could also be Agredon, I think. Yeah, A. Gordon. Woof, A. Gordon.
Oh.
How about a mem stack of Conley, Bradley, and J-Val?
I mean, I would rather have 2. I'm fine with Conley, Bradley. I'm fine with Bradley, J-Val. I'm fine with Conley, J-Val. Could all 3 of them get there? Yeah, it's the goddamn Hawks, and none of them are that expensive. You're spending whatever it is, 78, 66, and 40. I assume this is not FanDuel. FanDuel, no.
No, it's for DK.
Okay, yeah. For DK, I don't think it's ideal, but yeah, I'm fine with that and John Collins or that and Trae Young and sort of stacking up that game. Without any Atlanta, I think is a worse construction. But if you're saying, can all 3 of those guys get there? Sure. Do I think independently it's a better construction than just 2 of those guys? No, but once you go to the 3rd Grizzle, you add another Hawk. Number 1 owned, 27%, Jared Allen.
Ooh. Okay, we're with that. That seems fair.
That's I think I'd be a little over that just because of the value, and I think he gets you 30 tonight. We will see. Be sure to hate tweet me when he does not get 30. Today was really funny because I literally woke up to like 8 tweets and screenshots, and literally 4 were great job last night, Derek White, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and literally 4 were like, what the hell is wrong with you, you dumbass? And it's like, all right, I'm gonna
it's interesting psychologically to note the stuff that people take away from it. Like people remembered me being like, yeah, no, like Larry worries me in content, but like everything else, I feel like sometimes goes by the wayside.
People love a good fade.
Yeah,
people love a good. This guy's gonna be popular. I wouldn't go there. Like if Ayton has 26 tonight, I will get 7 to 13 tweets saying, "Great job saying don't play Ayton tonight." Blah, 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 blah. I didn't say don't play him, but I would have like 10%, and the field was at like 25 or something.
You know, it was a frustrating game yesterday too, since we talked about all the other games up front. That Denver game was annoying. It just got away in a way where nobody.
I liked I liked Jokic too. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that didn't work out.
40. Yeah, that wasn't the best playing the late slate. Ooh. I was like, he'll get me there. Nope. Jokic did not. Just kicked their ass. All right, who else we got, Daddy?
That was a rough one. So 27%, yeah, I'd want a little bit more. 25% Vooch, yeah, I'd want a little bit more. 24% Jeremy Grant, I understand it because of the specious value situation. 23% Terrence Ross, again, I understand it for the specious value situation. I like that more than Jeremy Grant. Again, positions obviously not apropos. Thoughts on Ingles? I like Ingles a lot. Jazz situation not incredibly different from Magic situation, beating up on the Suns as opposed to beating up on the Wizards. Difference being you don't have both teams super worried about playoff seeding. A couple of the guys on the Jazz we can expect to be a little more interesting for minutes, especially Ricky Rubio, who I think is probably towards the middle. But, especially FanDuel, I think Ingles is 61, and that position is kind of balls. I'm fine with that. Mitchell or leave 700 on table and take somebody. Did you catch the last word of that message? I'll go back.
Which one? Or leaves or Conley for Conley.
I'd want to make sure I had another Grizzle if I went with the Mitchell play.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh, yeah. Morris is out, helps Nerlens a bit there. Sorry, stuff was going on in chat. I thought like Adams was out. I saw someone write Nerlens in all caps. I'm like, did I do that again? So there was a day at the beginning of the year where I went, I kind of like Nerlens tonight. I think it could be a day you could have a good night. And then post-lock, Steven Adams got late scratched. And it was like, oh my.
That was one of your eerie psychic days. That was one of a few that rang true for me.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Anyway, Bobby Portis 22, just fine with that. Paul George 20 on DK. Again, I would have less than that. Just a lot of plays in that range that I like, and there's enough uncertainty. I would be under that. 18% Allen Crabbe, sure. 17% Westbrook. I would have more than that. 16.7% Aaron Gordon. I would definitely have more than that. 16% Augustine. Probably a little bit less. FanDuel and DraftKings very different in that way, especially same price. 12% D'Angelo Russell. I'd have more than that. Jonathan Isaac, 12%. I'd be right about there. Satoransky, 11.3. I can't remember his price offhand, so I'm gonna have to look. I don't want to just make it up.
6,100, I think.
61. That's
61.
about the right number then. I'm fine with that. Levert, 10. I'd be a little under that on DK. Oh, he's 4,800. That's about the right number. Steven Adams, 9.3. I'd be well over that. Beal, 9%. I'd be a bit over that. Harris, 8.5. Your boy. I could be a bit under that. Dinwiddie, 7. Probably a bit under that. Fournier, 6.25. It's understandable because, again, everyone's playing Terrence Ross. But I think I'd try to get a little over 6 in a very good matchup. Ed Davis, 6. I would have more than that. Jeff Green, 5.4. Would have more than that on FanDuel. Probably not on DK. Trevor Ariza, 5.4. I'd have more on DK. Jabari Parker, 5. I'd have a little bit more. The 5,600 price is getting up there. But Rodions Kurik's, 4.6. I'd have more than that. Schroeder, 3.45. It's about right on DK. Nerlens Noel, 0.8%. I'd have more than that. Jerian Grant, 0.6. No. Thomas Bryant, 0.5%. I'd have more than 0.5% Thomas Bryant. Terrence Ferguson, 0.3%. 3,200. He was one of the guys I hated the least. Like, if you were gonna go for a under 4K guy there. Troy Brown, 0.29%. Probably be less than that. The minutes have come down the last couple games. It looked for a while he was going to consistently get 20 minutes, and at minimum price, that made a lot of sense. But Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, 0.25. I'm not sure he's even going to play, so I'd have less than that. Kem Birch, 0.25. We're getting creative now. 0.08% Chasson Randall. 0.04% Markieff Morris. Congratulations, you played yourself. Just ruled out, apparently.
Oh, that's just poor timing. They didn't know.
I don't care. They played themselves.
Well, yeah. So Markieff is out, by the way. If you are one of those people who did have Markieff in your lineups, he has officially been ruled out.
Yep. Sorry if you are amongst that 1/25th of 1% who were just screwed by that horrible news.
Those people are crestfallen right now if they're watching. They're like, they learned by you telling them that they played themselves.
I'm looking. Someone told me they thought they entered my exact lineup on FanDuel. So I may have basically given it away through illusions. Hold on, I'm taking a look at the screenshot. And
so now you can sweat by proxy.
Right. And it's FanDuel, so it's not like anyone can change into it or anything. Yeah, he got it. He has it. This is exactly what I had for FanDuel GPPs. Augustine, Curry, Fournier, D'Angelo Russell, Jeff Green, Paul George, Aaron Gordon, Ed Davis, and Jonas Valanciunas. I did basically give that away by exclusion. When I was talking about, when someone said, what are FanDuel GPP plays you liked, I listed 6 of those guys and then alluded to all of them at least a couple times. So, yep, I suppose that was a full lineup giveaway unintentionally there. So, follow along. Wonder how many people have it.
I think I've only got one lineup out of 25.
Seems pretty chalky. A lot of it locked. Hold on. I've got a link. Lowest owned guy in that lineup of the 7 of 9 have locked already. Speaking of 7 of 9, talented actress. Evan Fournier, only 10% lowest guy. 14 for D'Angelo Russell. These FanDuel, of course. 18 for Jeff Green. 18 for Ed Davis. 20 for Aaron Gordon. 28 for Augustine. And 38.5 for Paul George. All of them have locked.
I'm a little worried.
That was a sexy daddy like.
I didn't play enough Russell, I think. For his price being down on DK, I didn't play enough of him.
FanDuel, too. 8,000 on FanDuel is better than 75 on DK. And he's just a brilliant pivot off Klay Thompson who's going to be owned up the wah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I didn't get there enough. That worries me. Tell you where I went a ton, though. Those Memphis boys. Those Memphis guards are going to be everywhere for me today. So don't hurt me, Memphis.
And again, if I have a failing with this lineup, no one on Memphis.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, it's like a 10.5 point boost from Vegas on their season average. Like, I mean, that could certainly go south. Atlanta has been better and slower, but
it's brilliant. You need the Jerry Ryan with a shout of joy. That's right. She's a well-proportioned young lady. Yeah.
I don't think she was a good actress, though. Just to correct your point.
I mean, depends. I don't want to get into it. But for what it is worth, acting the Borg, not exactly something that you get a lot of range in. Like, fucking Patrick Stewart, if he was only ever Locutus, you would never have been like, wow, great job. Like, be Mr. Roboto is not an acting assignment that comes with it. By the way, Aaron Gordon for 3. Sorry.
Got a lot of him.
Yeah.
Actually, here's a question for you that somebody asked in chat. I just wanted to confirm if I'm right. Aaron Gordon and Vucevic, would you say they have any negative correlation or no?
Yes.
Because of rebounding?
Because mostly because of rebounding and scoring.
Okay.
And you know, just the ways the game goes, they don't have the same sort of game upsides frequently. The more transition ends up being better for Gordon, the more staid the game ends up being slightly better for Vooch. It's interesting because whenever you talk about the correlation between two players on the same team, they always have positive and negative correlation. The most simple way they have positive correlation is Aaron Gordon and Vooch are both positively correlated in that if the game they're in goes to 5 overtimes, they're both really, really good. But more often than not, they would net out as negatively correlated, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I said that I don't think they're negatively correlated in this particular matchup because there should be enough pace, enough rebounds to go around. Where to me, like the rebounding is where I'd be the most concerned. And I like the matchup for both of them, but yeah.
I do not think Gordon is better with Vooch. I do not think Vooch is better with Gordon more often than not. Could they be in this case? Sure. Could they both work out great anyway? Absolutely. Neither of them, especially on DK, they're 92 and 67. They are both well underpriced for a very strong matchup. Their minutes are up, and they're not priced up enough for the matchup. So they're both great. Like, I wouldn't sweat it. But if the question is, you know, Gordon and Vooch, which Gordon was better? I think the first one is slightly better in a vacuum, but not ridiculously so.
That seems fair. All right, I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Sure.
All right, that's enough for us today. Anything else you want to hit on, Eddie, before we call it quits?
No, it sounds good. I will be back again tomorrow for we are in the middle of the greatest DFS streak ever of NBA scheduling.
There you go. So you'll get Eddie and Josh tomorrow. I'll be back with Eddie on Friday. Check the YouTube tomorrow for my Four Corners video. That'll be on there. No DK Live because they're rebuilding their studio or whatever. I don't even know what's going on, but I'll just be hanging out tomorrow watching these boys. Hopefully pick John Collins or whoever you need to pick, the John Collins equivalent for the day. I'll hope for you guys to pick. That's what I'm rooting for.
Nice.
Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button on the way out, and we'll see you guys again soon. Good luck.